And I want to talk to you today about what do you see? Okay? What do you see? And it starts with a question. Have you ever been troubled by something? You know, the feeling of being troubled about something that is around you. Because I realize that sometimes we go troubled, we go worried. And it's not a nice feeling. It's not a nice feeling, but we are surrounded by conflict, by situations, right? By problems, and we feel troubled. And, you know, and while it's not good to live all our life with a feeling of being troubled, the feeling itself of being troubled about something is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. There is no way in the Torah where it says that we should never feel that. You see, the problem is when we go around always feeling like that. But being worried, sometimes even being afraid or being troubled about something, it could be a good thing. Now, let's go back to this, to the Torah today. It's good that we started again the cycle. So we read the beginning of the book of Exodus, and we read about the birth of Moses, right? And how Pharaoh decreed that all the babies will have to be killed. And Moses was actually saved by the daughter of Pharaoh, remember what happened? That Moses' family put him in a basket, put in the Nile River. Hopefully nobody will know that the baby was born and he will be able to survive. But he was discovered by the Pharaoh's daughter, but instead of giving that baby to the authorities so the baby would be killed, she wanted to adopt this baby. Beautiful thing. But now they have a problem because I guess back in the day they didn't have a baby formula, right? So the Pharaoh's daughter couldn't feed that baby. So what they did is, I guess there were lots of new mothers there whose babies were just killed because of the new decree. So they went looking for one of these women to feed this baby so the daughter of Pharaoh could adopt him. So, coincidence or not, that person was Moses' biological mother. So the Torah say that Moses spent a big chunk of his childhood living with his biological mother. Now it's interesting because the Torah doesn't say what he learned there, what kind of experiences he had, right? Nothing about that. You have to use your imagination. But eventually, it does say, and this is the verse that I was referring before in the Torah service, that there's a verse that says that Moses grew up, okay? And he was given at that point to Pharaoh's daughter. So she took this baby to live with her in the palace. In today's Torah reading, there is a break there. I think it's brilliant. There is a break there. And then the next Aliyah will continue with a verse that also say that Moses grew up. Okay? But there were many years in between. First he's talking about Moses' childhood, and now he's a grown man. What happened in between? We don't know. We have to use our imaginations. But it says that Moses grew up, and he went out of the palace, and he discovered, or he saw, the suffering of his brothers, the way it's described in the Torah, of the Hebrews, that they were slaves, and how they're being mistreated. Now, Rashi, one of the most famous interpreters of the Torah, he asked the question, why do we have two consecutive verses using the same word, that he grew? And then Rashi say, well, the first time is talking about that Moses grew in stature. The second time, it says that Moses grew in greatness. Two different ways. One was physiological. He was not a baby anymore. He was an older child. But the other one is a different kind of growth of Moses. And it's interesting that it is described as growth in greatness, when he got out of the palace and he discovered the suffering of the Hebrew slaves. And perhaps for the first time in Moses' life, he was troubled about something. It's not uncommon for nobles and royalty that sometimes they are shielded from all the common problems. They live in a palace. They don't know anything that's happening outside. What happened to common people? Many people don't know. They don't want to know. They don't want to know. Moses, perhaps up to that moment, he didn't want to know. Maybe he heard about slavery. We suppose that not just the Hebrews were slaves there, because then when they leave Egypt, many people left with them. But for some reason, up to that point, he didn't care. When he did care, when he put himself in a situation that he felt troubled, the Torah said, "Congratulations, Moses, you're an adult now, because you discover the reality of the world." And the thing is, I guess, what we do with that feeling. What do we do when we feel troubled? Because we dare to look outside. Because we dare to know about the problems of the world. Because I guess sometimes it happens the same with all of us, right? We don't want to know what's going on in the world. You know that there are people I know that they never read the news. They don't watch the news on TV. They don't read the newspaper. They don't know what is going on. They don't care. They don't want to know. They don't want to know. That was Moses before this moment. But the Torah says sometimes you have to put in that spot and feel something inside so you will do something about it. Moses was troubled. And the next verse, it's amazing. Because we have these two moments of growth in his life. Then he discovered the suffering. What now? What to do now? Try to imagine Moses. Because the verse says, he looked one way and the other way. And then looking that there was no man, he killed the Egyptian and buried him under the sand, right? And the rabbis asked something very interesting. And you have to use your imagination. He looked one side and the other side. What did he see? What did Moses see when he looked one side and the other side? And they said the first time he looked one direction, he saw the palace, the Egyptian buildings. He looked the other side, he saw the Hebrews, his brothers and sisters. And then he continued, and he noticed that it was no man. And the rabbi said that expression is not talking about external circumstances, it's talking about Moses. All of a sudden, he looked one side, the other side, and he said, who am I? What am I? What should I do? And then eventually, the Torah says, he killed the Egyptian and buried it under the sand. And he said, it's not talking about a physical Egyptian. It's talking about the internal Egyptian that Moses had. At that point, and because he put himself in the position to feel troubled, now he started to discover his identity, and he started to do something about it. All of a sudden, he discovered that he was also a Hebrew, and it was not right that these people were suffering. And in order to do something, he has to make that decision. The Egyptians said, don't do anything. That's the way it should be. They are slaves. We are royalty. And Moses said, that's wrong. So he killed the Egyptian, buried it under the sand, and he did do something about it. Second book of the Torah, book of Exodus, start with this invitation for all of us. An invitation to grow up. And the sense is, growing up, it means that we are aware that there is suffering around us. An invitation to look to one side and to the other side and to ask ourselves, what do you see? Or in other words, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the comfort of the palace that would allow you to keep living your life like nothing is happening around you? Or the other side, which means that you have to deal with that feeling of being troubled, but everything around you. But if you choose that, you should know that God is telling you, congratulations, You are an adult. And now let's work together to do something about it. And this is the beauty of the Torah, to inspire us to remember who we are and to remember that we have a mission to fulfill in this world. We always have a choice to go back to the palace, but that's not what Moses is asking us to do. Moses became Moses or Moshe Rabbeinu, our master, our teacher, Moses, teaching us what to do. And if you truly want to embrace your Jewish identity, you have to realize that sometimes the Jewish way is to deal with the troubles and to do something about it. Shabbat Shalom.